Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Top Flight Show. I'm your host this evening, Richard Morell, and joining me on the couches, it's skeleton staff time. There's only me and Mr. Parr in the studio. Chris, nice to have you, but we're depleted numbers.
Yeah, always great to see you. Quality over quantity this time, but usually we have quality in quantity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, yeah, Stacey's away sunning herself.
And what about the other one, Mr. Boyack? Is he even on this podcast anymore?
Yeah, I've never seen Cameron and this stuff.
The Golden Gorilla, yeah.
Same room ever before, so now hopefully Cameron will be back soon. So, but yeah, anyway, top quality, me and you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I feel like we have got plenty to talk about because in tonight's show, we are going to recap the Battersea Park 5K, which, if you've seen our highlights package on the RunThrough YouTube, you'll have known it was an absolute quality, a barnstormer of a race. And if you haven't, go check it out on our YouTube channel. But Chris, you were actually there, not even in a work role. You were racing. You donned the flats again.
Yeah, I was a bit like a mystery shopper, wasn't I? Just showing up incognito. Yeah, I actually was in the carbons, but got a really bad blister off them, so that was a bit annoying. I actually got the blister on the Saturday. It was the first time I'd wore them for months because I've had a little bit of a niggly injury.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the tactic was don't do anything too hard because I haven't done any sessions for like 2 months. I thought if I just stick behind Alex for a bit, and then that should be like a threshold type effort.
Yeah.
But I couldn't keep up. So, it lasted about half a lap.
Yeah, I can see why you couldn't keep up as well, because we'll dive into the results a little bit later on as we get into the pod. But I mean, it was some event like, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. So it was the biggest top flight that we've had in terms of number of entries. When you take it as a standalone race, obviously we've got these massive events like Fulham 10K where there's 4,000 runners in and the top flight's at the front. But as a standalone race where we're putting the top flight on before the mass race so that they get a fresh, clean hit on the course, stuff like that. Yeah, biggest entries. And yeah, I mean, it was a very, very hot night. So the only thing that was, the only thing that could have been better is if it was a little bit cooler. Yeah. But it was swelteringly hot in London that day. But yeah, it was really good atmosphere, good quality field, good racing. And yeah, it was probably our strongest men's and women's race when you look in terms of strength and depth.
Yeah. 3
Olympians turning out.
I know it was fantastic seeing, like, I think as well, you look at like the third place on the evening, Jonathan Escalante Phillips, he won it in emphatic fashion last year as well. So yeah, you're going to have to be bringing some real quality to nudge him down into third place. But yeah, it looked like a class event. Obviously we were in the studio and then I've watched the highlights package, which like you mentioned, it's on, the RunThrough YouTube channel. So yeah, check it out. But it looked just like a phenomenal event. And sort of on that note then, obviously you birthed the idea of top flight. That's why they call you Mr. Top Flight on the scene, isn't it? But what's it like then seeing Battersea Park, and you were actually involved in it as well, so it brings like a slightly different dynamic to you, bombing around on your safety bike with your big white helmet on, like telling people to get off the course and stuff like that. Obviously, what's it like seeing like the series the idea that you came up with and pitched and it got off the ground and now it's grown and grown? Like, what does it feel like to actually be part of it as well?
Yeah, interesting you say that, but it's finding it hard to come up with the words here, but I think just unfinished. Like, although, like you're saying, it's grown massively and it's going places, but when I'm there, I'm like, this is just going to be so massive in like 2-3 years' time. The plan all along was this is going to take like 3 years before you've established each race. So again, the series is like 1 race per month. It's a mix of 5K, 10K, half marathon. It's around the country. Battersea is a venue that we use a lot in London as RunThrough. And it's a bit of a banker because it's flat, it's fast, it's got that reputation, it's easy to get to. So we know as an anchor, we can do like, say, 3 races there a year. Maybe you could do 4. You don't want to overdo it there. You want everything to be moving around, but we've got that like, there's a few anchor events. There's Battersea, there's Quayside, like Ribble Valley. They're the ones that are like the anchors that are already established. Yeah. And yeah, now for us, it's at each of these venues, finding the right date or the right distance for that time in the month to be the standout event in the UK at that distance. And then it's just grown it in terms of volume and depth. So at Battersea, we had the highest number of entries that were like below the 16-minute cutoff that we had for the men's.
Yeah.
So we had like 250 entries or something under that, which is class. It starts to bring a complication when you get a lot bigger numbers, because we've been doing it for free. You don't know how many people are actually going to turn up. So that, yeah, we need to, there's so many things where when I was running it, you're still in event organizer mode. You're going like, right, how can we change it? How can we make this course even faster? How we're going to deal with having like twice as many runners in? Can we do multiple waves? It's still just, when I'm there, it's just generating more ideas about how you can push it forward. Yeah. So yeah, there's no settling with it. It's just going to get like better and even more energy invested into it. Yeah.
I think as well, you can see like from the way that the entries come in, like what you'll say, like people jumping on the DMs. Like I know one of the guys that works at RunThrough, he'd mentioned how Sesemann had just seen a reel that there was going to be a race in Battersea Park and was like, oh, it's one of the top flight races. I might jump on that, and had dropped a message, and then he's obviously in it. And, you know, like for the athletes that are just doing it as a bit of a spin out when they've got like not a bit of downtime, but training, maybe not have a specific goal in mind in the next few months. Like I know Lloyd had said that Phil was doing a series of 5K races, so he had 3 lined up, and that was then going to be one of them. I guess as well with the Top Flight series, it's a good way to earn a bit of cash. And, you know, Alex Bell and Phil Sesemann both walked away on the evening with a good couple of quid in their back pocket. And we'll flick up a little graphic for you guys showing how much they'd raked in for their 5K efforts, which, you know, it's just a sweetener, isn't it, for the athletes?
Yeah, I think obviously coming from that same athletic mindset background as these guys, like the top priority is getting a good race. Yeah. So they would pay to travel across Europe to get a race where they thought they were going to take a tenth of a second off the PB. Yeah. Like, I've done it. I've gone to Belgium with Phil before, where we've, you know, driven down, picked people up from Newcastle through to Kent, got on the train, drove across to Brussels, and then missed a PB. But you do it because it's like the athletic goals surpass all of it, but the little hook of having the prize money and the bonus time money, things like that, does draw out a few additional characters. Yeah. It adds to the tactics of the event. And yeah, I mean, really good payday for them. It was £200 for the win, but then we set the bonuses. They're quite challenging because we're not just giving away the money for free, but yeah, they both were well under the top flight bonus, as we call it, to get that additional cash.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean,
and what that does is, because they run, so you put the money up, people will run fast, and they've had to run fast to get the money. But then the headline is these fast times that were ran in the top flight races. Yeah. And that then draws people in for the following races, not just at Battersea, because it's not about Battersea, it's about top flight. Yeah. So, you know, there's a 5K park run in Battersea Park, but you're not going to go to that race expecting to have a competitive sub 14-minute men's race or a sub 15:30 female race. But if the name Top Flight's on there, now it's got the kudos, because we've got the top runners running these races, and that brings in the next tier of runners, and then further down the field. So you're going to get to a place like next year where we're going to have 400, 500 people wanting to do this race, and they're going to get pulled round. So people who are 16, 17, 18-minute runners are going to want to come to this race to shave 10, 15 seconds off, because they know they're going to get on the train and get pulled around. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want that at all the races around the country that we've got.
And sort of at the top end, touching on the results, we had obviously Alex Bell taking on, it was international field as well. And she dominated that in the women's race, 15:41 for the win. It was Gabrielle Rucker in second, 15:57. A solid run for her, I would say, as well. And Olga Fasova in third in 16:19. Another strong performance. So the top 3 ladies there both had cracking runs, but Alex Bell sort of, without dropping the athletics pun like they always do, but she just ran away with it, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I actually probably had the best view of that race because I was hovering between Alex, and actually I started hearing the shouts from, might be Gabby's manager, and I knew that she was just behind me, and there was actually a little bit of a ding-dong battle, and I didn't want to get drawn into actually racing her, and I didn't want to be that guy who like out-sprinted her or something. But yeah, she wasn't far off.
Yeah.
Like
she wasn't.
The gaps weren't like insurmountable, whereas you often do see in the women's races, you might have one standout person and the gap's like huge.
Yeah.
Here it was being backed up, so you've got 3 current internationals having a bit of a tear up. And the having it as a mixed field definitely changes the dynamic there.
Yeah.
So let's say if that was a women's only race, you might have had the 3 of them together and Alex sprint.
Yeah, I would have imagined it would have definitely panned out different. I think, say an athlete like Alex Bell, great pedigree on the track, great speed. She's going to have a finishing kick, isn't she? So you would think that, if it was boiling down to, well, I just want to take the win here, she would have probably put in some different tactics, but that's not the way the race was going. And she hit the front in that lead from the off, really, and then that was it. She was away, and yes, they were in touching distance, but never got on the back of her, and couldn't hang with her.
Yeah, like you said, it obviously changes the dynamics. You had 2 very different races. The men's was a group. It was a lot more tactical.
Yeah.
Ends with, well, we can put it up on the screen now, the Phil sit and kick at the end. So despite being a marathon man, he's still got the speed.
An impressive run from all of the top 3. Well, not an impressive run from all the top 3. An impressive run just across the board in the men's race.
Yeah, definitely.
But particularly, those 3... Connor, I would imagine, would have been happy with his run.
He's coming back to form. He's been doing a few races.
Yeah.
He ran a 10K the week before. And then, Jonathan Escalante Phillips he was doing marathon.
He was, yeah. He done 2:19 was
he's working his way back in.
Yeah.
So he said he wasn't sure exactly like how much he would have in the legs after that.
Yeah.
Like marathon type training. Obviously, it was still there. David Stone, like we'd mentioned beforehand, he's had various like health issues that have stopped him racing for a couple of years.
Right.
But out of nowhere, won the European under-23 trial in Liverpool, and then went to the Europeans, finished 3rd, and this was his first race for forever.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I remember looking at his power at 10, and I was like, I haven't even heard much about this athlete. And then he comes out, drops them 2 big performances. But yeah, it was good to see him have a go as well. I thought that was a good move by him.
It was quite funny as well. So I think you might have missed it on the stream, but our mate Larry Mack took it on earlier on when the pace had dropped.
I did clock that.
Yeah, he took it on. Then afterwards, he'd like faded a bit towards the end. He was like, I went to the front and took it on. I was like, you could have always just sat in between behind the 2 Olympians and the European bronze medalist, and like sort of puts in perspective that like it was such a strong field, but you've got other guys who are like, they're not put off by that. They'll just get involved.
Yeah, sometimes
up there in the group, like, I'll have a go here.
Exactly. Sometimes the occasion, you almost feel like, I've done it myself, took on races when you probably shouldn't be in the position of doing that, but you almost get sort of inspired by the athletes that are around you, and you just think, you know what? I'm going to have a go. You're not having it your own way, and you never know what's going to happen in athletics, I don't think. It's hard to predict how it's going to pan out. For all Larry Mack knew is those are the guys they could have been eyeballs out, and I mean, they weren't, but he had a go, and it was nice to see him move to the front, and nice to see some Mop with Harrier vests down there as well. There was a couple of Finn Brody in there as well. He had a solid run, so that was nice to see.
Well, yeah, people came from far and wide because, like you said, in the women's, Gabby Ruka's 2:24 marathon run in Chicago, and then Fisarova's, I can't remember which country she used to compete for, but it's now Australia.
Yes,
but they're obviously So we're drawing people in from further and further afield, which is great. I think in the women's, like if it was a women's only race, how it would have probably panned out is it wouldn't have been as fast, but it would have been the same result.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, but having it as a mixed race pulls them out, and that was probably what they wanted as well. They wanted a hard, fast 5K. So we sometimes get people messaging saying, oh, well, why is there not a women's only race? You can put a women's only race on if it's going to be competitive. And that one, actually, you could have made the argument that it was competitive, but let's say one or two of them couldn't have ran at short notice, you then wouldn't have had it as competitive. So there's a bit of a balance.
Yeah. It was interesting to see, the bit that Lloyd done at the beginning of the race. Thought that was fantastic. And, he touched upon how he'd been talking with Sesemann, and he'd had 3 races, 3 5K races penciled in to get the legs spinning.
Top flight.
Yeah, well, he has already done one, but we won't mention where. But interesting to see he's dropping down in distance and getting a bit of speed back in the legs, and it then got me thinking. I was like, I wonder what his training looks like. So straight on the Strava, I had a little look and put some big mileage away. What are your thoughts on not Phil Sesemann's training, but sort of like I feel like there's changes going on with the approach to distance training, like across Europe. What are your thoughts on like the sort of the old school methods versus what seems to be, transitioning now?
I mean, yeah, doing high mileage is quite old school. And then like if you go back to like the Lydiards and whatever, so you've had
Arthur Lydiard, that's good knowledge, that.
Yeah, you had big spells like 20, 30 years where it was fashionable just to get to that arbitrary like 100 mile a week. Yeah. And it obviously worked. But then I think in the sort of 80s, 90s, early noughties, it was more training smarter. So trying to get more out of sessions and focus more on recovery, and the overall volume of people's training was probably less, but they were doing more of the 1%ers, which actually then end up not being 1%ers because they dominate your time quite a lot more. And I think now there's a bit of more of a revert to people focusing on getting a lot higher volume, lower intensity for the majority of time. But they can now put the volume, because they're doing more like thresholds and tempos and recovering. But as we've said a few times in other podcasts, the footwear is allowing people to do that. So it's the carbon shoes are allowing people to do tempos and thresholds and recover and get on with the rest of the training week without it being impacted. Yeah. Whereas, let's say 10 years ago, I might have gone and done a 10-mile tempo around the streets of Gateshead. You're on tarmac. Yeah. You're definitely feeling that for the next few years. You do that and you do a track session in flats or spikes. There's a limit on how much of that you can do without picking up a niggle or an injury or damaging your calves. It's so much easier to do it with your carbon shoes on. So people are getting more volume and feeling fresher off it. Yeah. And that's definitely, so somebody like Phil is an example of somebody who maybe, I don't know if he would have been, but Phil's an example of a 1500 metre runner who's gone up the distances and he's handled all the increased volume, doesn't look like he's lost much of his speed, hasn't changed his style, looks absolutely like fantastic doing it. 10, 20, 30 years ago, stereotypically, you would get your 1500 or your middle distance 5K guys moving up the distance, and the style would alter as they got to the longer distances. And then most of them wouldn't be able to do it at the marathon. They would just break down and go, can't do it. There's so many examples. Whereas now, the middle distance runners are managing to take it right the way through the marathon. Yeah. So you've got like Almgren, the Swedish guy. Yeah. He's come from 800 metres up to being like European record holder. Yeah, he's like a 330. I think he's like 330, 1500 as well. You're right. He's moved through the system, and I think you look at like say even like some of the middle distance runners now, like the volume. Like you really look at Ingebrigtsen, the work that he's doing, big volume. These double threshold days. There's certainly been a shift towards that in the past couple of years. I would say that's filtering like. It's became the thing to do because of the Ingebrigtsens, I would say. I feel like that's, spanning across Europe at the moment. So yeah, it is interesting to see that sort of shift in training. And I wonder in, say, 10 years' time, whether it shifts back to the old school. It's hard to say where it's going to go, really, isn't it? What'll probably happen is there'll be some element of both, because somebody will be hyper successful who's training different, and then everybody will jump on that bandwagon, and it'll work for some people and it won't work for others. I think for 90% of people, what's going to, or maybe even more than 90%, what will guarantee you being a better runner is doing more volume.
Yeah, I think the key thing you said there, though, is what works for the athlete, and it's not a case. I'm going to drop another running pun here. It's not a case of one shoe fits all. I know they're brutal, and I don't even mean to do it. But yeah, I think it depends, like, on the athlete, what they're geared to, what their body's going to respond to. I think that's the key thing, and I think that's what makes, coaches that can spot that in their group and go, well, I know that this training, it's not going to work for this. I'm not going to be able to get the best out of this athlete by doing that. So yeah, I think we're going to see different things.
Yeah. And we're still learning. I say we as in like athletes and coaches. We're still learning what the impact of the carbon shoes are, because 5 years ago when they came out, people were just pretty much exclusively keeping them for racing because they cost so much money. Like ridiculous price. So you're like not getting them dirty at all. Just keep them so they've got all of the spring necessary. But then I think gradually, because they've now become the norm, it's now at a point where people are doing like a tempo running, they're doing the sessions in. And there was a fear, like 5 years ago, I remember speaking with Alison Rose, who's like one of the top physios in the UK, and Ali was at the time being really cautious, saying, because we're not sure what the impact of your calf and Achilles are if you're wearing these, and you're basically offloading because it's giving you help. If you wear them too much, is it going to give you some weakness? And then if you do get an injury, have you just weakened your calf over a very long period of time? And then so there was definitely that fear around it, but it seems to not be the case. Yeah. Don't sue me if it is, but like it seems that that they're just really benefiting people's training. Yeah. So if you had, like, you wouldn't want to do all of your runs in them all the time, but certainly people are doing their sessions in them. They're running on the track, they're running road sessions in them, and they're not getting as many injuries. They're not breaking down. Like if you look at the marathon, stereotypically, again, rolling the clock back, if you had like the London Marathon, you will still get DNFs, but if you had the London Marathon elite fields, they would start off and you would have loads of them in the group, and then you would have people DNFing of the main favourites from like halfway through to about 30k, because it wouldn't be quite going right for them. The calves would be tightening up or hurting. They'd be like, it's not worth it. I need to stop, take stock, and then come back and do something in like a month. Otherwise I'm ruined for a year. Now, no, like hardly anybody drops out. Yeah. There's hardly any DNFs, and then they're fresh and they're recovering. They can do another race like really soon afterwards. Yeah. So I think once that's still not totally embedded in the coach's mindset, so they're still like cautious with it, but maybe in a year's time or 2 years' time, they're going to be like, well, we know we can get away with a lot higher volume with these and a little bit more intensity. Then maybe to bring this another element of training in there. Yeah. And that maybe like pushes everybody on again. Yeah.
And on the note of the future, what's next for Top Flight? Yeah. We've got an entry.
Future Top Flight races, yes. Yeah. We'll have our graphic for all the races coming up.
Entry 5K.
We have got, entry 5K. So that is the 20th of July. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. We had that in there last year. It's a massive event at entry. You got like 1,600 runners. The Top Flight is basically on as a show in front of them, and we'll come to that in our next podcast. We've got Quayside 5K, which again is the OG. We've spoke about that one a lot because that's our local one. It's upgraded again in terms of the course this year. We then got Cheshire Half, which is another fast one. And the journey around the country continues. We've got Fulham in October. Jarrow in October. Yeah. Fulham in November, which was sub 29 last year. Yeah. And the thing about the Jarrow one that we've changed, again, we're trying to change every time to make things better. For Jarrow, we wanted to be after the 6-stage relays to make sure we got the best runners. And last year they changed the date and it ended up clashing. But to get away with it this time, we've gone to the 19th of October and just being like, we're definitely going to be clear of it. And Abbey Dash, which has always been a massive one around that time of year, I was trying to move away from that by going earlier October. That's been pushed back to the end of November. So it's totally cleared the path now for that to be the top 10K in October. So excited for that one.
Then close the air out on Ribble Valley, which is...
Yeah, exactly.
Always a big one.
Got to hold back on your Christmas dinner. But...
Absolutely. Right, guys. Well, I think that's enough from us this evening. Thanks for tuning in to the Top Flight show again. If you want to check out any of our previous pods, any of our previous live feeds, any of our highlights packages that we've put together, please head over to our RunThrough YouTube channel. There's plenty of content on there. And yeah, give it a like, give it a comment and a subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. But thanks for joining us again.